Welcome back, my beautiful people, to STR News and Digest, your go-to place for everything related to STR, travel, and the business of hospitality. Hope everyone's enjoying the evening. I got some interesting news, and I also got some stuff that I want to touch on as it relates um, to host in general, right? So let me go over a couple things that I want to talk about today. The first thing I want to talk about is wait, let me go here. Boom, boom, boom. Just make sure I'm in the right spot. And that the first thing I want to talk about is Airbnb. We talked about Airbnb, being or trying to not only catch up and keep up with booking, and we're going to talk about booking as well, but some of the stuff that they're testing out. Like right now, Airbnb is testing out airport pickups, which I found a little interesting. I don't know how that's going to work because we currently have Uber. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about booking, as I just mentioned. We're going to talk about finally what's required to go into the UK. Now we have a clear idea what's needed if you're going to visit the UK. We're going to talk about what the airlines are predicting in terms of travel for spring break. Spring break is right around the corner. And if you're an STR operator and you haven't adjusted to your plans for this upcoming spring break, you're behind the times, man. You should have did that last month. But we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to explore and talk a little bit about how the one segment or the fastest growing segment in travel, and that is experiences. We're going to touch on that. So the real question is going to be this: related to Airbnb? Is Airbnb go to be a full service travel agency? Is that going to be something that's viable? Again, guys, if you are watching, number one, thank you for watching. Number two, if you have any questions or comments, list them below. Lorena, tell me at the end if we have any questions or something stands out. I'll go ahead and pick it up. Right now, we have Lorena who just said hi. How you doing, Lorena? But I'll answer questions towards the end. But if you have any questions or comments, just list them below. If you're watching live, say hi, tell me where you're watching from. But specifically, one of the questions that I'm asking is if you currently use Airbnb or are planning to use Airbnb, what do you think? Well, let me rephrase it. Do you think you would use some of the services that Airbnb is currently adding to their platform? Right. I just talked about. Hold on one second. I just talked about what they're planning to do in terms of airport pickups. Again, my question is that something that we're actually going to use? Because you would have to book that in advance. And because of Uber and Lyft, I don't know if that's actually going to be a viable thing, right? Now, it's cool if you're able to if the way they implement it is as you book, they're giving you the ability to go ahead and book your airport pickup at the same time. If you're able to do that and they make the process simple, I think it's a viable tool. I just don't know if it's going to be something super simple, right? Let me see what else they talked about. So right now, here's what Airbnb is doing. We already know that they can book the home. They're looking about booking the transportation. They already have experiences, and they added in Q4 of 2025 services. So out of those 4 things that they added, let me know in the comments which one of those 4 do you think you would use. And then again, also ask the question: is it going to enhance the Airbnb experience, uh, make no difference in the experience, or take away from the experience? You know, my personal opinion is that depending on how easy they make it, it's going to depend on how successful it's going to be. I just don't see them. I think they're too late in the game to have an impact, like, for example, on airport pickups with because of Uber and Lyft, right? I can tell you from personal experience, way back in the day, we used to provide that service. If you booked one of our properties and you needed an airport pickup to take you to the property, we provided that service. And I can tell you in the last 4 to 5 years, um, we stopped doing it because people weren't using it. It was actually easier for them to go ahead and use Uber or Lyft. So I just don't know if that's going to work. Anyways, let's talk about booking.com. Booking, if you're not aware, I've already talked about this before, but if this is your first time watching this channel, the three big platforms right now is Airbnb, booking.com, and Verbal being, still way below and needs a lot of work to catch up to Booking and to Airbnb. So, but Booking as an international company, is by far the number one OTA out there. If you're not aware, give me one quick second. These people left a dog there and she would not stop barking. But as I was saying, Booking is, and if you look at their holding group, it's Booking Holdings, and they still dominate on a global scale. They don't dominate in the U.S. In the U.S., Airbnb is still number one, but man, are they catching up. I would say if they continue with this trend, within the next year, if not sooner, they're going to surpass Booking.com. This is the reason why Airbnb is really trying to reinvent itself, because they know they're losing ground quickly to Booking.com. So, here's why this matters, right? Booking has what Airbnb doesn't have. Booking has a loyalty ecosystem, has a strong international hospitality dominance, right? Because Booking from the very beginning started as a hotel booking website, and then they brought in short-term rentals. Airbnb really wanted to say that they were a separate entity, meaning that hotels weren't their competition, weren't part of their business plan or business model. But now they're realizing that was a mistake. Hence why now in areas like New York City, Barcelona, Madrid, just to name three places that short-term rentals have been heavily regulated, and they've seen a huge drop in availability or in properties that are being available on the platform. They have no choice but now to embrace hotels. Now, they're not embracing the major brands because the major brands are already on Booking.com or have their own direct booking loyalty program or website that dominates in terms of their particular brand. And they're going after these boutique hotels, these small mom and pop operating stays or in that particular ecosystem. But Booking.com has always had it, right? And they have, again, because of their long-standing relationship with these corporations, it's like we said before, relationship and who you work with matters. So it's going to be tough for Airbnb to go in and try to gain some market shares in the hotel world when most of these big corporations are already tied into and have a relationship with Booking.com. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens now especially for the summer and Q4 of 2026 to see how this plays out. But I don't know. You guys, you tell me if you're watching this and you're international. What do you think about Airbnb? What do you think, and vice versa? If you are local, I mean, if you're in the US, what do you think about Booking? Would you use Booking versus Airbnb or vice versa? Now, the new UK entry rule became into fact, and here's a couple of things that you guys and started in February of this year, right? February 2026, and although they've been talking about this for a very long time, it took forever to implement. But if you're all you need to do now is just a little extra step and pay. And I forget what the entry fee is for this. I forget what they call it. ESTA, I think it's what it's called, or ETA. I'm sorry, the ETA. And basically, this affects U.S. travelers. But basically, you got to go on their website and like pre-register, pay whatever small fee it is before you go into the UK. Otherwise, they won't let you in. A lot of countries have implemented this. I can tell you during COVID, one of the Colombia, which is a country that I travel to a lot, they started requiring this immigration entry form to be filled out before you traveled, and that's entering and leaving the country. They started that during COVID, and they kept it. A lot of countries did the same. The UK and the EU have been saying they're going to do something like this for a long time, and it's the UK actually implemented it, and it started in 2026. So be aware of that if you're planning to travel to the UK. Next, let me see something real quick before I continue. All right, next is going to be spring break. I've said this before, and I want to say it again so that you guys are aware. There's a couple of websites that if you are a host or in the travel industry, you should get very familiar with. TSA being one of them, right? TSA collects data of all the people traveling, either domestically or internationally. Why is that important? Because you want to know if in your region you're seeing an uptick, it's stable, or you're seeing a downtick in travel, so that you can be prepared and adjust your short-term rental accordingly, right? And meeting your pricing accordingly. Now, as a result of TSA and some of the stuff that's being implemented, here's what sucks. If you're not aware, and if you haven't traveled in probably in the last month, you're not going to be aware. But if you have traveled, you know what's going on. There's a partial shutdown in the government, right? And it's TSA is affected by it. So, for example, global entry and pre-checks have stopped, right? They're right now. You can't take advantage of those programs because there's not enough TSA personnel to continue to operate those programs. So that is an issue. When I travel, it's funny because before TSA and before pre-check, everybody was in the same boat. But once that happened, when those programs came about and I started participating, man, now to think that I have to, when I go through security, take off my shoes, take out my laptop, take out my jacket to get through security and not have those short lines, it really causes me to think twice whether or not I actually want to travel, right? But again, going back to this data point, airlines, hotels, and TSA are anticipating a lot of travel now for spring break. I can tell you from our data, our properties for the month of February, month of March, and part of April are already fully booked. And we're seeing the highest RevPAR that we've seen in a long time, right? So if you're a short-term rental operator and in your specific region, you're seeing these numbers go up, highly recommend you make sure that your pricing software is set up properly so you take advantage of these travel demands that are going to happen during spring break. Um, then the last thing I'm going to talk about today is what's booming in the travel industry. I talked about it in the intro, and that's experiences, right? Travelers want experience. They don't just want a stay. I talked about it in last week's STR News and Digest. I recently bought a couple of properties. I hadn't bought properties in a minute because, as I mentioned before, I'm trying not to, unless I get a great deal like I did on these two properties, I'm trying not to buy residential homes. Right now, unless you get a phenomenal deal, I don't recommend you invest in a residential home to do STR, because the market is still somewhat saturated. We're seeing a drop in supply, which is good, but it hasn't dropped enough to offset the cost of the property. South Florida properties in the last 5 to 6 years probably have doubled, if not 3x what they used to be 5-6 years ago, right? I used to buy properties and the highest on average, I was buying properties in about $200,000 to $300,000 range. That's what I was buying properties for back not that long ago, back in 2023, 21, 22, and 23. I was rarely ever paying more than $300,000 for a house. Now you can't find anything in that price range. Everything's more in the $500,000 range. You can still find some deals like I just did in the $400,000 range, but still, that's a lot of money. And it really cuts into profits if you have to get a mortgage. And our team, we're fortunate that we're buying cash. So not only are we getting deals, but we don't have to have a mortgage and we don't have to have insurance, because those are the two things that are killing deals today, is the mortgage and the insurance. I mean, it's really killing cash flow on residential properties. But going back to the properties that we purchased, one of the houses that we went into, it is like going back in time. So we're going to do a 1970s theme on that property to make it a unique stay, because travelers today, they want something that's Instagrammable, right? They want to go into something. And if you don't know what Instagrammable is, they want something that they can go on social media and post and immediately get eyeballs because it's unique, it's different, right? That's what people want. And if you want to be successful, if you want to really maximize your revenues, that's what you need to have. So experiences, it's going to be huge. Now, adding to the experience is not just the stay, it's stuff that happens outside of the stay. Providing e-bikes like we do, catered or concierge services for people coming to your property, finding and locating hidden gems that a lot of people don't know about where you live. Fort Lauderdale's full of hidden gems. One of which, and during, if I remember, next week's STR News and Digest, I will show you a picture. I found this phenomenal bookstore, and it is really unique. I've been here, I've been in Fort Lauderdale for years, 3 decades plus in Fort Lauderdale. This bookstore has been there forever, much longer than I've been here, but I've never knew about it. It's a true hidden gem. It's an experience when you go in. They have really, really old books. When you go in, it's huge, it's massive. Even though it's a bookstore, when I went in there, I didn't feel like I was in a bookstore. I felt like, it's really special. But that's what I'm talking about. Finding those and providing and giving those to your guests so that when they're visiting here, they have a very unique experience that most people are not experiencing, so that it can, again, go on Instagram, go on TikTok, go on Facebook, and talk about it. And what does that do for you as the operator? Free advertising, people. Free. I can't express how big that is, and making sure that you keep your property occupied. All right. I think that is going to be it for today. Let me make sure I'm good here. All right. That's going to be it. Lorena, do we have any questions?
Yes, but I don't know what happened with the comment, so I didn't put it through during the live because I mean, I can see the comments, but I don't know what happened. Okay, I'm going to try to put it here myself. I don't know if you can see. Okay.
It says, oh, I see it over. I just see the comment. I saw it come in. It says Airbnb picked up sounds interest, but has to be cheaper than Uber. Oh, pickup. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. It has to be cheaper than Uber, and I don't see that happening. I don't see that. I don't see the viability in it because you're right. It has to be cheaper, and it's not going to be cheaper because the person has to get notified. The person has to be there. If your flight's delayed, the person has to wait. And who's picking up that cost? So you're right. And it says, next question. Next question.
This one. Yeah.
Which other platform you recommend instead of Airbnb, Verbal, and Booking? Well, it depends. If it's a last minute, if you're going to travel last minute, meaning if you're going to travel within the next 48 hours, Winstay, WHIM Stay, it's a phenomenal website. They have great deals. We advertise on Winstay, and we have part of our agreement with them is that we, at a minimum, we're offering those stays at a 25% discount. So that's a phenomenal website, OTA, if you're traveling last minute. The other, Google's another area that I would go to, or Google Travel. I use Google Travel a lot. Why? Because it shows me short-term rentals. It shows me hotels. It also gives me pricing. I can set up a parameter. It can tell me when the pricing is dipping or not. There's a lot you can do in Google Travel. I'm a big fan of Google Travel. So those are the two that I recommend, right? Next question is, don't...
you can read it in your...
Yeah, don't like Verbal because the service fees can be high and sometimes the total price ends up being much more. Yeah. In most cases, I don't see that to be the case. But you're right. That's one of the reasons why Airbnb came out with what they refer to as transparency pricing. A couple of things to keep in mind on any OTA, and this applies to hotels as well, because hotels have resort fees. Most of them are adding these resort fees that are not listed on your price. But when you get there, you have to pay like $7, $10, $25 a day for a resort fee. Short-term rentals is the same. Verbal, for example, you got to keep in mind, you're going to have to most likely pay for a cleaning fee that sometimes is not really dictated in the daily rate. So when you check out, all those fees will show up as in the checkout process. None of the fees should show up, or there shouldn't be any fees after the fact, meaning after you book, there shouldn't be any surprises. It should all show up at checkout. The problem is a lot of times you're not going to see that until checkout. But just make sure you're aware of that and make sure you look. If I see a property, I always just take it all the way to checkout to see what the final price is going to be. Because sometimes, again, you'll see the daily rate and you like, oh my God, this is a good daily rate. But you don't know what the cleaning fee is yet. You don't know what the taxes are. You don't know if there's and if it's international, the vet tax. You don't know any of that until the end. And sometimes you can find out in the listing description. For example, we have a security deposit that's not a fee Although I don't understand why people always, well, you're charging me this. No, I'm not charging you anything. It's a deposit, meaning you're getting it back. You have to leave a deposit when you rent a car. You have to leave a deposit when you book a hotel. We do the same thing. I don't know why it's such a shocker when we ask that, but it's not a fee. But because a lot of people are not accustomed to that, we added that in our listing description. The problem is people don't read, right? So it does become a problem, but you in terms of fees, you will see that at checkout. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, the last one is in your screen.
In my screen. Okay. I don't like booking.com because when I had an issue with a reservation, they told me I had to resolve it directly with the property. That's a good, I don't know why they do that, right? Because you're right. Here's the deal. When you book on an OTA, you are the customer of the OTA. But you got to remember, all OTAs today use either AI or they use overseas customer service that are not familiar with the policies. It's easier for them to say, try to resolve it with the host. But at the end of the day, you're not the host's guest, right? You are a guest of, if you're booking on Booking, Booking is that's who you're giving your money to. You're not giving it to me, you're giving it to Booking. And in turn, Booking pays me, but they're paying me after they collected their fee because we're just advertising on their platform. So there's a fine line of who customer you really are. Once you come to my property and you're in my property, I consider you then my customer. I got to make sure you have a great stay. But until then, don't call us asking questions about your reservation if you haven't already got a confirmation from us. Because here's the big thing. When you book on an OTA, you should be getting not only the booking confirmation from the OTA, but some type of communication from your host. If you haven't heard from your host, there's a problem. And we've had a lot of issues like that. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Expedia owns a lot of separate smaller OTAs, right? Booking.com, hotels.com, Expedia. There's like 6 or 7 OTAs that are owned by Expedia. But the Expedia is the holding company, right? So when the booking comes to me, oftentimes it's going to, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about it, not just Expedia, booking.com. Booking.com has hotels.com. They own a couple of other online OTAs. But when we get the reservation is going to come to us from Booking. So if you booked on hotels.com, they have their own separate division that I have no idea of where exactly you booked from because it comes to me from booking.com. The reason I mentioned that is because recently we had somebody book one of our properties from booking.com and got all of our information, but we never received that booking. So we never provided them the check-in instructions or anything like that. And on the day of checking, I'm getting a call from this person saying that they have a reservation with us, and they haven't received anything. And when I looked, thankfully for this guy, the property was empty and we were able to book them. But if it was already occupied or already had a reservation, there was shit out of luck because we never got that from that platform. So always double check. Same thing applies with your airlines. A lot of people like to use like Kayak, for example, to get flights. But check with once you book a flight, let's say you book a flight on Kayak for American Airlines, man, make sure you check with American Airlines, that you have the reservation. Make sure that that you have all the information from American to make sure you get on that flight. I got burned like that before as well. I booked a flight. I forget the OTA, but I booked a flight off platform. Never bothered to check with the airline. And on the day I'm supposed to fly out, I'm trying to check in, only to discover that the airline had not realized the flight was overbooked. So I couldn't get on the flight because the first person they're going to bump is you because you're not an actual American airline customer. You're a kayak customer. So, just keep that in mind. Anything else?
Nope. Everything is okay.
All right, my beautiful people. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.